Oh, what language is it? I'm sure
Hey guys!
It's English. Okay, so welcome back to this advertisement episode for Lasergurkenland, reachable under lgl.zillium.com. It's an anarchy server, make sure to join. Let's go. Yeah, so I need a few minutes of silence to... What am I doing? Oh yeah, I should probably check if the stream is running. To make some plans for this episode, because it's a short video. I guess I'll go to the closest. Yeah, it's here. The closest OMK edge and start building some TNT duping machines. Yeah. Sounds like a plan to me. Alright. Okay, then I would say let's start the video. We are going to watch a video from 2019 with... Oh, it's this way, right? 6,000 views from the channel Chris Were Digital. Perfectly pronounced as always. And yeah, it's a channel we haven't watched a video yet from. He's talking about PeerTube. The title is YouTube versus PeerTube. Thoughts on PeerTube as a competitor to YouTube. Okay, let's go. Oh, if you're interested in the video, you should probably check out the original. Link to the video is in the description if you're interested in playing on the server. Yeah, check out the server, obviously. Okay, so it's reachable under... I mentioned IP already. I don't know why I keep repeating stuff, but yeah. So let's play the video.
Guys, so for today's video, I thought I might have a little bit of a ramble about my experience using PeerTube. Now, just before I crack on with today's video, I've decided to record at a bit of a ridiculous time. The sun's about to go down, so if there are any changes in lighting as the video goes on, that's very specifically why. The sun's always very low in the sky, and it gives a very hard angle of light.
Oh, we didn't do obsidian. That's what you get. Whatever.
That comes through, and I've tried to soften it as much as I can, but it never really looks too good to record when the sun is setting. But I know you guys are really here for the more substantive stuff of my videos, so I know that that's not going to. I know that that's not going to bother you guys too much, but I just wanted to make this video today, and I kind of had the impetus to do so, to talk about PeerTube. Now, PeerTube is a potential alternative to YouTube, but it challenges the very framework of how YouTube is put together. It challenges YouTube's sort of centralized nature and its monopoly on video sharing on the internet. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the pros, the cons, whether or not PeerTube is the next YouTube killer, or whether or not it potentially can be, and a little bit some thoughts surrounding that. This is going to be a very rambly video,
Highly
and I doubt that I'm going to cover all the topic points that I want to cover. But like I said, I just kind of had that feeling to make the video, this video today. And I've been playing around with PeerTube now for quite some time, actually. A good number of videos have gone up, certainly since last year. And my channel, of course, I will link it in the description below, but it also can be found at share.tube. It's a wonderful URL. But the difference between PeerTube and YouTube and all the other attempted YouTube killers is that PeerTube isn't actually a website. It's not actually a platform. It's a piece of software. It's a piece of software so that any person capable of hosting it can then host their own video sharing website. But further to this is that an instance of PeerTube, an installation of PeerTube, can then federate with other instances of PeerTube and other pieces of federated software that work with ActivityPub. So, for example, Mastodon, Miskey, Pleroma, and all of the other pieces of software that can actually fit together in what's called the Fediverse. But PeerTube is just one of these components, and you can also subscribe to videos using RSS and other PeerTube accounts, or you can actually subscribe directly from you can subscribe directly to a PeerTube account using, for example, your Mastodon account. So there's a lot of ways that you can actually access PeerTube content, and it fits into an existing ecosystem really well. I think this is one of PeerTube's great strengths, because the biggest problem when you've got a potential YouTube killer getting off the ground is just outright viewership, right? People are not, like creators like myself, are not going to necessarily have the enthusiasm to create for a platform if no one's going to watch it. And so, like, the first hurdle that any potential YouTube challenger needs to have is a way to garner viewership. And it definitely seems that PeerTube has this considered in mind. Now, it's certainly the case that whenever I put out any content on any platform, it has always been YouTube where the most number of views comes from. And this is the thing, YouTube's monopoly is not actually strengthened by its ability to host all these videos. I mean, it does host a sort of an impossible number of videos that no other competitor can hope to achieve. But then again, it doesn't have to. If you think about the majority of content, the majority of bandwidth and disk space that YouTube uses, it's likely just going to be people messing around on their mobile phone.
Yeah, or trash videos like I record, like actual trash videos with, like, I have hundreds of hours on my channel and they have an average of a half view, which is not all the time, but mostly me and a few bots who watch this. I generate so much chunk traffic. I don't even feel bad for YouTube because whatever, but I start to feel bad about the environment, about all the hard drivers that I fill and, like, create trash on this planet, and it's the worst. I mean, I used to have YouTube channels where I put so much time into my videos. I spent weeks on crafting videos I will enjoy rewatching even years from the creation on, and those videos are usually not longer than a few minutes, mostly like 2 minutes at maximum, like the long videos where I put weeks and months and sometimes years of time in it. And now I started this channel and it feels like crazy. I mean, I don't even have upload times anymore since I'm streaming live. So the essential production time of this video is the same time as the length of the video, which is ridiculous in my experience. Yeah, and that's crazy. Just wanted to mention that while he talks about the huge sizes of data. Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's going to be useless, archives of live streams that hardly anyone is ever going to watch. If you actually get rid of all of the content that we can quite happily afford to lose, that isn't just being used as an archiving platform for data that or for videos that aren't really necessarily useful or desired, and that we actually focus on the quality of video. So if we just want quality content where just some effort has gone into it, some editing has gone into it, then it becomes a much more manageable goal, especially if you decide that, for example, 4K 60 frames per second is not something that everyone needs. Hell, these videos that I produce, they don't really need to even be in HD. So it definitely seems the case that, like, the hurdle of bandwidth and the hurdle of disk space can be overcome. Now, with PeerTube, it does use BitTorrent technology. It basically brings in the strength of BitTorrent, so all of the weight of bandwidth isn't put on the servers themselves. A popular video will then get shared around using BitTorrent, and that is a way to make sure that servers don't get overloaded. That is a wonderful piece of technology, and it's an age-old piece of technology. We've been BitTorrenting stuff, Linux distributions, for example, for goodness knows how many years. It is it's a tried and true way of getting a file across the internet to a lot of people really quickly and really efficiently. It's a wonderful piece of technology that, it's testament to its, wide usage as well. So it's definitely definitely managed to overcome some of those initial hurdles. But the trouble is that, like I say, YouTube's monopoly and the power of its monopoly does not come from its ability to host videos. That is just a feature. I mean, if you think about it, right, YouTube famously operates at a loss, like at a financial loss. But why does YouTube keep putting in new features and putting in so much development into a platform that costs it money? And the answer is actually very straightforward. If you think about it, it is because owning the monopoly on video sharing on the website is worth all of the money that Google throw at it. It's worth everything, right? And again, we're usually heavily advised not to talk about things like ad block, but that's one of the reasons why YouTube doesn't mind you using ad block. It turns a blind eye to it. Obviously, it would prefer that you don't, and obviously advertisers and to some degree content creators kind of, benefit from ads playing on our content. But YouTube itself is more than happy to take that financial loss of ad block if it brings more people onto the platform, if it's got eyeballs on their videos, because it strengthens their monopoly. And then what they can do then is that they can then apply that monopoly to an app. They can apply that monopoly to a browser. And let's face it, when it comes to browsers, there is a near monopoly on the Chrome browser as well. Not to mention that it has a huge foothold in email with Gmail, and of course search engines as well. And again, at the core of Google's content strategy when it comes to YouTube and other content on the internet, it's about discoverability. Also, I just want to take this moment to point out AMP, Google's attempt to actually try and monopolize mobile frameworks in terms of just basic websites as well. Google really do have their claws on the internet, and of course there's Google reCAPTCHA as well. And countless websites that claim to be an alternative to a Google product or claim to be a rebel against Google's monopoly will employ the Google reCAPTCHA to protect themselves from DDoS attacks and spam and all that kind of stuff.
That's so true.
Even the people that try and break the Google monopoly in many cases end up still running Google code on their site. And that's not even talking about Google Analytics. If you've got something like uMatrix, that's the add-on I'm thinking of, you can actually have a look at all of the third-party pieces of software that are associated with any given website, and you just have a look at how common across the internet Google Analytics really is. Like, Google really and well and truly have eyeballs and claws on the internet in all kinds of avenues that many of us probably haven't even imagined as of yet. So they are more than happy to take financial losses if it means strengthening the actual power itself, because who knows, 10 years down the line, when they own almost every avenue to internet access, then they can actually start throwing their weight around in ways that we would find, quite rightly horrific, because we have now just sealed ourselves into a corner thanks to the conveniences of Google products. So this is one of the reasons why the monopoly of YouTube is such, it's a thing to be concerned about in terms of a threat to the open internet as well. So, and Google know this, and this is why Google will put so much money towards protecting that monopoly. And again, this is why they put a lot of money towards open source projects as well. That's why they have seats in regards to on the Linux Foundation, for example. They want this level of control. They want influence at all levels, all stages here as well. And it might not even go. They are working on, of course, a new kernel, the Fuchsia project. So that might be their attempt to actually break away from using Linux technologies, which are technologies that are ways to actually protect, open development on computers and an open internet and all that kind of stuff. They are sort of using defamed embrace, extend, extinguish. That's the one. And they are just trying to use the old Microsoft adage that was, I believe it was originally Microsoft that used embrace, extend, extinguish. The idea of start using technologies and start adopting them, then start implementing features that are only then available for your particular avenue of this said open source technology, add-ons that only, proprietary add-ons on top of open source software, and then extinguish to make it so that people then become reliant on those proprietary add-ons, or maybe even reliant on Google money as well, Google funding as well, because we know that there are plenty of institutions in the free and open source world that take Google money, and how long, and they might not necessarily be reliant on that money now, but what happens over time? Well, conferences only get more expensive over time. I do not work in events professionally, but I certainly had a hand in them in other parts of my life, and they are very expensive, only getting more expensive. There's more and more health and safety that needs to be taken into account year on year, more and more red tape, insurance, paramedics need to be paid. The bigger the event, the more it's all that kind of stuff. It's all required. Money is essential. There aren't ways to do a lot of these things on the cheap. So, and that's not even talking about Google's hand in the political world as well, where they like to throw money around. Google invest in all these kind of avenues that sort of take on this spirit of extend, extend, extinguish. So, anyway, how can PeerTube fight against this? Well, it does aim to bring about discoverability. So it sort of aims to embed itself within existing open internet frameworks using things like RSS, using things like the Fediverse as well. And that's a great step. But another avenue, and it can garner viewership from this way. Now, sometimes centralized platforms, I know, for example, my videos are mirrored over on PeerTube, and my videos over on PeerTube get a significant number of views there. And there are arguments to say that while centralized platforms, even ones that are not Google, make it easier to discover content, and that is a fair argument to make. But you can still have big PeerTube instances that, while at the same time hosting a lot of content themselves, can sort of bring in content from other places as well. So you can almost, in theory, get the best of both worlds. Now, I do want to point out at this point in the video that PeerTube is very, very, very young technology. It's very young technology. It's only recently come out of beta, and a lot of
2019. Crazy.
The determining factors in terms of the quality of experience of PeerTube are also going to come down to the particular instance that you're running. So some instances are going to be run better than others. Some instances are going to have more resources dedicated than others. Another thing that people do tend to criticize PeerTube instances for is that they don't tend to have very much in regards to upload allowance. So sometimes PeerTube will only allow you a couple of hundred, maybe a gig, in terms of how much video that you can actually upload to the site. But I've got to be honest, I in some ways consider this a feature as much as a bug, because it makes us realise that stuff needs to be paid for. We can't just magically expect videos to be hosted for free. There is a cost to having all the video content hosted on YouTube. And that cost is not necessarily, immediate. It's like prison debt, where you get something for free, but you know that it's going to cost you in a big, big, big way later on down the line. So it's like taking something for free when you're in prison. It's like, no, it ain't free. You're gonna pay for that in a way that you really don't want to later on down the line. So it's a bit like that. But maybe people just aren't that forward thinking. Maybe people aren't, don't feel like they have that much of a stake in it, or maybe people just don't care, or maybe these are problems too big for most people's minds to concern themselves with. But definitely when it comes to PeerTube, it makes you think a little bit more about the value of disk space, the value of hosting, the fact that it's not free, that someone somewhere's got to pay for it. And maybe you can have PeerTube instances that are funded by Patreon. Maybe you can have PeerTube instances that are funded by creators actually buying or renting some of the disk space. If you look at somewhere like SoundCloud, you do actually have, when you upload things to SoundCloud, it's very much a case of the creator has to pay for the bandwidth and has to pay for, or actually not the bandwidth, the disk space specifically to host their sound content on. SoundCloud is not or it doesn't seem to be, an ad-supported platform in the same way that YouTube is. If I wanted to upload the audio content from these videos onto SoundCloud, it would actually cost me substantially more than hosting it on YouTube. So that is something to be taken into account there. That disk space has a genuine value, and if you're not paying for it, someone somewhere is, and that's something that needs to be, sort of recognised, I think. So, and I don't necessarily have a problem with creators having to put the bill on this one. because it means that we can then assess our content. We can assess its value. I mean, some people might make the argument that maybe content that goes up on the internet, particularly video content or anything like that, shouldn't necessarily have its survival depend on whether or not it's fiscally profitable, and that's a whole different complex argument in and of itself. But the thing is that there's no such thing as a free lunch, which kind of means that that PeerTube forces users and forces creators to recognize the value of the services that they're providing, the value of the hardware that is being provided, the value of hosting. So yeah, that's definitely some aspects on PeerTube in that regard. However, so one area where YouTube does succeed and where PeerTube is still very much catching up is in discoverability. The fact of the matter is, you think of a video, it doesn't even have to immediately have any relevance to the internet, but if you want to look for a video, your immediate port of call is YouTube. Like there is not a PeerTube, there is not a place on PeerTube. You can't search all of PeerTube instances. There is federated networks and things like that. You could even use regular search engines and things like that. But in reality, discoverability is a hurdle that I feel that PeerTube still needs to overcome, and it may well do. Like, it's still software that is being thoroughly developed as this video goes out. So that is worth bearing in mind. But discovering video content on YouTube, that's where the real power of YouTube lies, discoverability, and it makes a lot of sense if you look at Google's origins. Google's origins, of course, being the search engine that was simple, straightforward, to a degree minimalist, and it got, they focused on getting the quality results. And yeah, maybe part of those quality results are the fact that it uses a lot of information about you to determine things that you might be interested in, or content that you might specifically want to look at. And if they apply this to YouTube, which I assume they do, which is quite obvious that they do, then they can find a lot of entertaining content that would meet a lot of people's requests in that regard. So yeah, YouTube's strength is not necessarily hosting its own content. Like, for example, if we did take away all of the content that we could quite happily live without, it's not unfathomable to think that non-YouTube companies and that community-based organizations could take a lot of that load there. But so discoverability is definitely something that YouTube really does have that other platforms typically do not. And a lot of people who I know who are content creators, professional content creators on YouTube, will hear the advice from YouTube representatives and even from their channel network advisors that you should treat YouTube as a search engine. And that isn't necessarily the worst advice going. The majority of my videos are actually watched by people who are not subscribers to this channel. And it's actually kind of remarkable to think that. But yeah, it is very much. Like, I look at the analytics all the time, and it becomes very, very, very apparent that not even by a small margin, by a significant margin, the majority of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. And that means that I rely very heavily on YouTube and Google's algorithm to actually get my content out there in a way that it just won't happen with PeerTube, that just won't happen on BitChute, or at least will happen to a much reduced degree, or any other platform that my video or my content goes up on. So that is very much the case, and especially when it comes to ad-supported content, the number of people watching is definitely something that contributes to how much, to how much money a video is going to make you, and therefore, contributes to bills being paid at the end of the month and all of that kind of stuff. So, it's generally speaking, we're advised as content creators not to talk about money on YouTube. I know that kind of stigma is being broken down now, but it is something that comes into play. And actually, that takes me on to another point here, that YouTube does have over almost all other platforms is monetization. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of creators do depend on the revenue that ads from YouTube bring in. I do, right? That's the thing.
Did I die already?
More than to actually
oh my gosh!
PSL's example and get and get ads off this channel.
Oh my gosh!
But the fact of the matter is that that I need the money. That's
going AFK. What a struggle. Was kinda close, huh? But I didn't even use my totem yet.
I've got bills to pay. I've got, I've got to feed myself and all that kind of stuff. So, and YouTube, when it comes to revenue, sort of being a revenue stream, is actually more reliable than a lot of other, especially pay what you want models. Anyway, without labouring the point too much, the ability to monetize videos when it comes to basically the practical day-to-day living and time management and all that kind of stuff, like, it is important. I know that it's not great to talk about on here. I know that it always doesn't go down well, and there's always the crowd that say, well, if you can't make it on YouTube, why don't you go and get another job and all that kind of stuff. And maybe that's a discussion for another day. But it does come into, it is an important factor. People have bills to pay, people have mouths to feed, and if the avenue options on YouTube actually, they're kind of pretty good actually in a lot of ways. Like, a lot of people, of course, despise YouTube ads, but and I've even been encouraged by a lot of people to actually try and find like industry sponsors, for example. But and that's definitely something that isn't, it isn't an idea I've ruled out. But I've always actually kind of liked the YouTube advertising model in one particular capacity, is that it actually distances me from the advertisers. It means I can be completely critical of any organisation, any company, no matter how close to home, no matter how involved in the free and open source space it is, because the people that sell and show the adverts on YouTube are a completely different set of people to the people making the content. I have no influence whatsoever in terms of in terms of the organisations that I talk about. It was hailed as a really great idea back in the day, because you'll often find on, for example, TV, that the advertising deals that they have do actually impact on the overall channel in other ways. So, but anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. But and certainly not complete thoughts of that. But I think that it is something that that I'm not necessarily saying that PeerTube ought to take that idea wholesale, because again, that may not necessarily be a road that we want to go down. But if PeerTube and PeerTube instances and the overall network are going to take people away from YouTube, we're going to break that monopoly, money is going to come into play at some point down the line. So that's definitely something to think about anyway. So just as the sun is going down, I'm going to wrap up with my final thoughts. I don't know the intentions of the PeerTube development team. I don't know if they intend to take down the titan that is YouTube, or just build a small, modest community alternative to it, or whether or not they're just going to build some tools for which other people can then, craft the video sharing landscape as they see fit. But it definitely, to me, shows a significant degree of promise, providing that it, carries on with a degree of momentum, because I don't see YouTube in any way being competed against by a like-for-like company. For a start, there's nothing to say that company won't then develop the same inherent problems, the same inherent systemic problems that we see with YouTube as a monopoly. But also, because it requires a degree of hardware and finance that I think that Google are just too far ahead with at this stage. And if there is going to be a like-for-like YouTube competitor, it's likely to come from an Amazon or a Microsoft or even an Apple. Probably less likely with Apple, but you never know. So, well, I mean, they do have iTunes, so there's that. But then again, iTunes is a little bit different, isn't it? It still focuses on a more decentralized way of doing things. So maybe we might see the podcastification of video through services like PeerTube, and that would be pretty excellent. But also, we don't have to think of PeerTube as a YouTube killer. Like, there can be several models for video sharing on the internet that coexist. The idea behind Google's business model does seem to be to squash all competition, to be the top dog, the dominant platform, and to the monopoly is built into its business ethos, and that needs to be challenged, in my opinion. But that's not to say that the answer to that is smashing it to a million pieces, but rather building or rebuilding the open web. And online video, it definitely seems like it's here to stay, but that's not to say that we can't build it the way that we want, the way that we see fit. It's going to be a long road, it's going to be a tough road, and I think a lot of people will have some rather negative hot takes along the way, thinking that they know better than all of that. But to me, it's just a fight worth fighting. It's just something that, that monopoly should be challenged, that we should see if alternative routes are possible, that a better internet is possible, that a more open internet is possible, and whether or not it can solve the same challenges that the Google-styled internet claims to or wants to. So there's a lot of factors at play here. Will PeerTube be the YouTube killer? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, let's face it, anyone that's gone up against YouTube so far has not done particularly well, and maybe that's because that not being YouTube is just not enough. Maybe it needs to be something more. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this goes, but my videos will continue to be put up on ShareTube specifically. That's my PeerTube instance, and I've got to say, just on from a creator standpoint, from a user standpoint, it's really nice. It's a really pleasant experience, and I'll put a link to the channel down in the description below if you guys are interested in watching my content on a different platform, on a more open platform, because it is, PeerTube's where my heart's at, I guess, as well. So anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. That's about it from me today. And if you are interested, of course, these videos, these long, rambly discussion videos, are also available for...
long. It's like one of the shortest videos that we watched on this channel, and he's saying long.
On Patreon.